saying, my name is Lisa Myers. I'm a artisan curator, and I'm also a member of Slave First Nation. So my mom's Anishinaabe, and my dad is his family in Oakville, and mostly from European descent. But as at my work as an artist curator, that work is that I've come to know Luke quite well, and also his work. So really excited to be able to be here tonight with him. I also work as an assistant professor at university in the faculty of environmental studies. Teach about food. I teach a course called Food, Land and Culture, and I teach community arts and socially engaged art. That's enough about me. I'm really excited that that Luke would join us here for the residency, and through this, giving a talk on his work, and especially some of his most recent work. I also think it's beautiful that you chose 10 p.m. at night to consider some of those West Coast participants that are in the residency. So the talk is part of a residency called Contingencies of Care, and it's a virtual residency that's presented university and UBC Okanagan, and there's some Emily Carr people here and some York people here, and I apologize, and Toronto Biennial are also part of organizing it. So I thank them very much for all of this. And what reason I was interested in, Luke, you contributing to this residency, because I see you're offering up ideas that relate to care, and there's ways that kind of form, but I was thinking about your work engaging with or cares, interact with them, and also how work has thread throughout it that acknowledges grief. And within grief, there is a call for care. There's not always care, care doesn't always show up, but definitely calls for this. So I recognize things in your work, so I'm really excited about contribution here. I think some of these will arise through talk and our discussion, but I wanted to preface a little bit with this, this statement that I've just kind of made to show how fitting it is that you're here. And since we both decided to introduce ourselves, I think I'll turn it over to you so you can introduce yourself, and you go into some talk work and we'll have a discussion about. So I'm here with you.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Lisa. My name is Luke Purnell. My father is Haida from Masset. My mother is Nishka from Kingolks. So I'm Wilt Lucky Nishka, which means I'm from the House of Eagles. I grew up in Port Edward. I'm from Northwestern BC. I'm an assistant at OCAD. I did my original undergrad at Ontario College of Art Design, and then I apprenticed with a master carver, Henry Green, for 3 years, and then I went back to went to Emily Carr to get my master's degree a few years ago, and then sort of to put all that into my work. And I think being a storyteller really, it started early for me. I didn't recognize it though until I apprenticed with Henry. Henry's a storyteller, and he really sort of imbued on me that the work has to mean something. And for him, it was more traditional, telling traditional stories, and he does work about land claims and place, basically, and territories. And I originally felt really uncomfortable using, when I explored Northwest Coast Art more after I started apprenticing, I really noticed that the appropriation of Northwest Coast Art is acceptable. It's accepted by everybody, and everybody just sort of shrugs it off, and then sort of when people say something about it, they're sort of like beaten down on social media for like criticizing people, non-Indigenous people who carve Northwest Coast style. And so for a long time I thought, well, we have to keep something sort of back. And so for a long time I wouldn't use traditional stories in my work because I didn't want to share that with people through my work. I wanted to sort of keep that back because they sort of had taken everything else. But over the years, I sort of softened. I sort of started, so I started writing my own stories and creating work based on my own stories and sort of work based on contemporary issues. And the way I looked at it as sort of a continuation of totem pole carving, where the totem poles were telling stories of the people, and I want to tell stories of the people, but I would be telling contemporary stories. But over the years, like as I became a storyteller and I started making work, I started looking at studying some of the old stories, and they're so rich and they're so great, and I really wanted to use them. And for a couple of years, I wanted to really badly, and I didn't because of my stand. And then finally, I just realized, you know what, I'm older and I'm developing, and it's okay if I change my mind. But it took me a couple of years to like fully believe in myself that way.
So there's a kind of like your initial thoughts about being careful and thoughtful about the stories that you worked with. In some ways, it sounds like like you were protecting those stories by not using them. Would you say
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, that was my goal. Actually, I can show some of my work.
Okay.
You can keep going. I'll just flip it through here and there.
Okay. Are you going to start with some of your older work that you were thinking about?
Well, I was thinking about what I was talking about, sort of talking about contemporary issues. These two are two paintings from a series of 7 paintings where I was exploring the exhibition history of Northwest Coast art. And so what I did was I looked at the artwork, and I chose 7 exhibitions over, I think, 40 years. And the first one was Arts of the Raven. And I thought about shows that were really important to Indigenous people. And the two I chose to show, I went from Arts of the Raven to, geez, I can't even think of the last one. Anyway, I chose to show Arts of the Raven and Robes of Power, because I felt like they were both like extremely important for, I mean, Arts of the Raven was important for identity, but it was also kind of the beginning of sort of mass appropriation of Northwest Coast art. So it was sort of double-edged sword in ways.
So in some ways, you were maybe thinking it wasn't protecting sort of some of the integrity of the. No,
I always used to say that the Arts of the Raven is the exhibition that separated the art from the culture, where whereas Northwest Coast work was cultural, and I mean it was art to us, but it was really part of the culture with other people. Then I feel like after Arts of the Raven, it became arts and culture rather than just culture. And then once you sort of separate the art from the culture, it became really formalist. And so people started creating it from a formalist point of view and not really caring about the tradition or the history of the work.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I thought Robes of Power was really great because I feel like each project was very personal to the artist, and it was really important to the people who made them. And I just felt like in the Robes of Power, which is a great title.
And where was Robes of Power? Where was that?
It was technically, I think it was a fairly small exhibition, but they got a lot of really amazing Northwest Coast artists to work on robes. So it was really amazing. I can't remember all the details, but it wasn't like a huge exhibition.
Okay.
It's just very important.
And so these paintings were kind of your response to these exhibitions that you.
Yeah. So what I did was I appropriated either, like for this one, I took a piece from the exhibition and sort of created an artwork that was sort of appropriating that piece. And so this one, I sort of looked at the mission statement or the curatorial statement of the exhibition and made a work based on that. And I also looked at this work also comes with text, like a text panel that will sit next to it. And the text panel is where I looked at the curatorial statement and criticism of each exhibition. And I got as much information as I could, and I sort of like appropriated them and put them together into one statement. And so when you read it, it's really weird because you can tell there's different authors speaking. And it was just my way of exploring the Northwest Coast exhibition history from an artist. I was trying to do it from an artist standpoint rather than from an academic standpoint.
Yeah, it's kind of talking back to the exhibition. It also sounds like it's like a critique of the exhibition in a way. I don't know, would you think of it as a critique of it?
And there was also a way to explore, like, you know, like with Arts of the Raven was very sort of non-Indigenous curated, and, you know, they were just sort of collecting pieces and showing them and so on and so forth. Then when you get to Beat Nation, which is the last one I worked on, which was totally like Indigenous curated, Indigenous artists and all working together. And you sort of see that shift over time. And I think what was really important was in the 80s, there weren't any real big exhibitions of Northwest Coast art. There were just a lot of small ones like Robes of Power. And that really gave like Indigenous curators agency to sort of show the work that they thought was important.
Yeah, so representation.
And then you come out of that in the 90s and 2000s and you get, you know, big exhibitions like the Raven Traveling Show and the Charles Edensaw Show.
Oh yeah.
And Beat Nation. We have Indigenous curators who are working with Indigenous artists.
Yeah, so representation is, there's a different kind of representation happening.
Yeah.
Like a little more invested in the communities and connected and part of those communities of artists that you're working with and representing. Can we see the rest? Can we see some more of those paintings? Of those?
No, I only brought 2.
Okay. No, seriously.
Yeah.
What's Convocation Robe? Oh, okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, so this piece I did a couple of years ago, or maybe 2 years ago. And this was for, I really wanted to sort of explore the idea of reciprocity and sort of the idea behind like potlatches and Chilkat robes. And what I did there was so I made this series of prints. They're not numbered, they're an open series. There's actually 1,500 prints. And the idea was I put them on the wall, and then when somebody would buy one, they would tear it off. And I basically did it as a fundraiser for OCAD. So 1/3 of the money went to the Indigenous students, 1/3 to printmaking, and 1/3 to sculpture. And so the idea is this idea of reciprocity, and, you know, the idea of a potlatch where if you get invited to a potlatch, they pay you for coming, like for witnessing whatever it is you're there to, because you're there to honor them. And you pay them off. And it was sort of became, you know, it became a thing where, you know, the potlatchers would go back and forth and people would receive gifts, and, you know, and a lot of time the chiefs would be very generous. And I just wanted to show that idea of creating something, the idea of giving back. Because, you know, I got the job at OCAD, I went to school there, and, you know, OCAD's really given me a lot. I worked there in the wood shop as well back, you know, in the late 2010s. So, and it's just that idea sort of giving back to the community that helped me out so much.
Yeah, that's a really really special kind of offering and response to not a very common response to the institutions that, you know, we work with. And you're not even really, you're in a way, this work it doesn't just reduce, you know, your place of work or your place of learning. You don't reduce it to an institution. There's kind of an interesting way that you've engaged with a kind of relationship with this, you know, place that's made up of a lot of people, but it's a really nice gesture. I didn't realize that this work was about that kind of reciprocity with, and it's also like acknowledging what you've received from them. So in giving back, that's really nice.
Thanks. Yeah, and it was fun to do. I got to work with the printmaking department at OCAD, and it was great. It was a great experience. I actually didn't even do any of these prints. Like, it was part of a special residency they have in the printmaking department, and so I had a couple of assistants, and basically I did the design. It's an eagle design done in Chilkat style, and and they did all the work. So I was really glad to say I love it and tell people how great it was, because it, you know, because they did the work. I was like,
Yeah.
you know, if I did it myself and I said how great it was, it would sound so self-serving. But because, you know, the two assistants did all the work, I was like, this is amazing. Like, they did such a good job, and they're
You
so
got to
professional and so on
work
and
with
so
like
forth.
master printers.
Yeah, so it was pretty amazing.
So each image we see on in this picture behind it is a whole pile of them, right? So there are
Yeah,
multiples
each
of
is a stack of 100.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and I had like fantasies that we'd sell out, and I give the school like thousands of dollars. But we sold a few.
That's good. Do you still have some?
I still have lots.
Oh,
Still probably
okay.
have like 1,200.
Oh, okay. Well, okay.
Yeah, so I'll have to run it again and see what happens.
And
And
telling-
this was just a print I did. This was part of a series I was going to do, and I decided not to do. I was going to do a sound-based installation with 7 pieces, or I called it 8 minus 1. And the idea behind it was like each one would have like a QR code to an aspect of a song. So there'll be 7 aspects, and the only way you could hear those songs if 7 people had smartphones and they all play time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, I just couldn't get it together. Like, the idea just couldn't. It couldn't develop. Maybe it'll happen someday,
Yeah.
but I just couldn't get the idea going. Like, it just died, and it took a long time. And I had like, that's what I was gonna use the box drums for, and drums. And I was gonna have like, you know, there was like some painted drums, and if you clicked on the QR code for the drum, would be the drumming. You know, and I had a male mask. If you clicked on that, would be the male singers, a female mask for the female singers, and like I said, they'd all play like a song. If you play them all together, it would be a song.
Mm-hmm.
And each one of the pieces is based on a traditional Haida story, but I wouldn't like tell anybody what the story is. So I sort of working the idea of preferred knowledge as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to write the song myself, but I'm not really great with writing songs. It's really hard. And so yeah, the idea sort of just stalled, and I still have this print. I'm not sure I have 5 of them. They're giant. They're like 2 feet by 3 feet or something.
It sounds like a project that would call for like quite a few collaborators, and that would probably alleviate like some of that, you know, some of it. I don't know if
For now, the idea is, you know, going back into my sketchbook. Maybe I'll revisit it someday.
Yeah.
It sounds really exciting when you talk about it. When I talk about it, I get excited, but it just didn't go anywhere.
Well,
I love this print.
Yeah, well, maybe it's good that you're talking about it tonight and casting it
Yeah.
out there. Maybe you're gonna it'll come to be.
Yeah. This one was I cut it out. It was screen printed, and I cut all those out of paper and put it on plastic. So yeah, so not computer generated.
Nice.
And then this piece I did a few years ago. This was for part of Keep Six, Samara Gallery, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Samara Contemporary. And so they had a little like a 4-day festival, and Rafi sort of asked me if I wanted to do something for the exhibition. And he's like, it would be great if it was interactive. And I think what he actually meant was he wanted me to paint in front of people. But I took it to heart, like interactive, what can I do? And so we bounced ideas back together and sort of came up with this. And then, so what I did was, you see the drawings on the right, and then that's what ended up happening on the left. So what I did was I basically blew up the design. It's a butterfly design. And the reason I use butterfly is because with Nisga's, the butterfly is like when they do clan dances, they'll say like eagles, and all the eagles will get up and dance, and, you know, frogs, and all the frogs will get up and dance. But if you're non-Indigenous and you don't have a clan, then they'll say butterfly, and everybody will get up and
Oh wow, I didn't
dance to
know
the
that.
butterfly.
Yeah.
But other tribes don't like it sometimes because they do have butterfly clans,
Oh, okay.
like as one of their subcrests or crests. And the idea behind this piece is I was trying to sort of look at reconciliation from my point of view. Like I was trying to tackle it from an artist's point of view rather than academic, sort of in a way analyzing it.
Mm-hmm.
So what I did was each one of those squares is 16 inches by 16 inches. So this piece is actually 7 feet by 12 feet. And so what I did was I drew the design on the board. And during the 4-day festival, I had some tables set up and I had some paint and paintbrushes. And people would walk through the alley where I was, and I just say, would you, first I say, would you like to paint one? And they say, sure. And I say, all I want you to do is, my lines are on there. I'll ask you to respect them, but you don't have to. And what I want you to do is think about what reconciliation means to you. And so people painted, and I think there was 43 pieces of wood. Over 50 people painted, and each one who painted, I gave them like a little bag of like a pop and chips and some chocolate bars, and sort of my way of paying them.
Mm-hmm.
They signed the back, and sort of I paid them for doing the work for me. And so the original title was Reconciliation or Recolonization. But then when we were painting it, my friend Himmel, he goes, Luke, this is like a neon reconciliation explosion. And I was like, oh my God, that's such a good title. I was like, that's going to be the title. And so the strange thing about this piece is I finished it a few years ago, but I mean, I couldn't finish it because over that year of reconciliation, like my ideas about reconciliation were really shaped by like, the murders of like Tina Fontaine and Colton Bushti.
Yeah.
And the trials, and it really sort of soured it for me. And so this isn't a picture a picture of it finished, completed. I sort of cut out that hole, and all it shows is the backing. Like it's got like a chipboard backing, and like and you can see like the 2x4s, and so I wanted to show, and I decided I was just going to leave it like that because I wanted to show that it was just, the reconciliation was just a facade, and it wasn't real.
Kind of veneer.
Like
So you mean that?
It's a fake house plan.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Did you mean the circle at the bottom of?
Yeah,
in the middle at the bottom, that oval?
Yeah.
So that would reveal like the sort of back materials that are kind of holding it all together.
Yeah, like originally I intended to paint something really cool in there, like a figure sort of coming out of there or something. And then, like I said, and then I couldn't finish it because I just sort of soured in reconciliation. And I was sort of worried because I asked people to paint this for me, and it was really positive, and I didn't want them to think I was gaslighting them, like where I had this like secret like plan to like make it sort of this, critique of reconciliation. Yeah. But then I realized, I asked them to be honest, and I thought, well, I have to be honest to myself. So that's what I decided to do with the piece.
Mm-hmm. So the collaboration is there. So your voice
over
has
50
to come
different
through
people
as well.
painted it.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing, and I can look at it and I can't remember every person, but I can remember certain people, and I can remember sort of stories. Like there's 4 of them that were done by one family, and they're all like, the mother was Indigenous and the father was non-Indigenous, and the kids sort of had fun. A couple of them were done by my friends, and then one guy painted one and he did a really bad job, so he tried to hide it away, and so I had to like look for it and find it.
Finish the picture. Yeah.
To finish it. Yeah. Pretty funny.
That's really great. I didn't realize it was a butterfly motif. Because that I'm working a lot on researching Mike McDonald's butterfly gardens.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So every time someone talks about butterflies or anything, so maybe we'll talk more about that a little bit at another time. Yeah. I don't know.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So I'm seeing some very familiar, more recent work coming along here.
Yeah.
Did you want to?
Yeah. So this is on the right is a still image from a film I made called Remediation. It's on YouTube. Just look up Luke Parnell Remediation. You can find it. There's links on the Slack, I think, or in the mill note in my little section there. There's a link to the film. And the left is what the hell did I call that piece? Remnant 1.
Yeah.
So Remnant 1. So basically, I carved this. If you watch the film, you can see me carving. I carved it as a 7-foot totem pole, and then I cut it in half. And I journeyed with the top half, and then the bottom half I turned it into sort of the remnant. It's a remnant of the piece, but it's an artwork all on its own. In the film, it's basically just a prop. But once the film was done, I completed it, and it really became its own piece again.
I just put it in the chat.
Excellent.
Yeah. So what Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so you what I know of this story is you carved this pole in Quebec at a residency at Stuart Hall, and then so you quite dramatically took a chainsaw and cut the pole in half. You carried half of it across the country,
Yeah.
and that's you getting from Stuart Hall to Tsawwassen Terminal to take the ferry over to the island,
Yeah.
and then you so like this one part, the part that's on the left stayed in Stuart Hall, and the other half of it kind of flew away with you
Yeah.
to the island to Vancouver
Yeah.
Island, where you
Yeah.
tried
And I took the
to
train. I took the train across the country.
yeah. um there's so many things, there's so many layers to this project. Like, it's an endurance performance in a way of you carving and walking and even taking a train. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you chose to do with that part, like maybe the journey that you took with that, and then what you chose to do at the end of the journey. Like, what was it
Okay,
like
so
traveling with that?
it was pretty. It was pretty awesome. I mean, I was walking around like Vancouver, and thing about the film is, I put it on YouTube and I put it on Facebook, and so my family and friends were like, so at the end of the film, I burned the top half. I don't want to give away the end, but that's what happens.
I was
Anyway,
not trying
so
not to, but then I thought,
anyway, so my friends or family was like, well, I can't believe you burnt the artwork and stuff, and I was trying to, I didn't say anything, but the artwork isn't the piece, it's the film. And so if you watch the film, like, we didn't just like choose. Oh, we had happy accidents, but a lot of the places I'm walking were chosen by myself. They're places that were important to me. Some of the neighborhoods were neighborhoods in Vancouver that I grew up in, and some of them were. I was trying to show that, trying to show some, non-Indigenous monumental sculpture, and visited and Norman had just passed away. Norman Tate, and he carved the totem pole that there's a part in the film where I stop and I look up at a totem pole, and that's by Norman Tate and his family, and he had just passed away recently, just before that, so I kind of wanted to honor that. And as far as when walking into really where it sort of got, we had a really happy accident in the film when we were driving to Sombrio, and we came upon this like clear cut, and my buddy Sean Arden, who was the co-producer, he's like, "Oh my God, this is awesome! We have to put this in the film." So like threw the backpack on with the eagle, and sort of walked around the clear cut with it. It's in the film. And that was just like a happy accident. We were just driving along, and it was like, wow.
yeah,
It's so funny, like making a film. Like, I never made a film before, and I had these ideas about what it was going to be before. And then when you shoot it and you show people, and it's just like it's pretty slow film, but the original cut was like 20 minutes long, and it was like really slow.
yeah. I think
Like a
I
lot of
saw the 20. I
contemplative.
saw the 20-minute cut too, didn't I? I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so a lot of me just sitting around staring out into the abyss,
I like those shots. They're good.
thinking about hunting salmon.
As you should.
Yeah.
But you did this work in response to a documentary about like the
Yeah, it was in
removal
response
of
to
poles,
the
right?
Timeless Totems of Skangway. It was a CBC film. It's on the CBC website. We couldn't get it for we did like a finissage sort of thing in Stuart Hall a year later, and we couldn't get the film to show. We were going to show that film and then show my film, but the CBC charges like an arm and a leg
Yeah.
to get any of their stuff.
What year was that film again?
The Timeless Totems.
Yeah.
It was in the 50s.
Yeah. So it's like this
And it
black
was
and
when
white.
they went to Haida Gwaii to like cut down totem poles from abandoned villages and put the pieces in museums and private collections. And I remember watching it, and it was so like, Bill Reid was at the time he was just a CBC broadcaster. He wasn't a carver yet.
Yeah, he's a narrator of it.
Yeah, he's a narrator of it, and it's so condescending, like the video, like, and it was just annoyed me, like it just went out of its way to show that, like, because they're talking about saving this culture and saving these cultural items, but like the people who were ferrying them over there in their fishing boats were all Haidas. And they sort of I felt like they went out of the way to like show that these Haidas, these contemporary Haidas were different than the old Haidas.
Mm-hmm.
And it really it really pissed me off. So I was like, I got to do something to show that, you know, the power of the artwork isn't in the material objects. It's in the intangible, things that they're based on. And that was the whole idea behind the film. That's why I burnt it, because I'm a carver, and this. I mean, sure, this object has meaning, but I can carve more. Like the artwork doesn't die with the piece being destroyed. If I pass on my knowledge, and the knowledge was passed on to me by Henry, and it's passed on to him by a few different people, and I'll pass it on. And I have I'm a teacher, so I'm passing on knowledge. So it survives that way. It doesn't survive by these objects, because you can take the objects away now, and the culture will still keep going.
So in some way, like they were in that film, and I watched it and it was really dramatic. Like they were cutting the poles into sections that would fit in the crates that they had built maybe on site or whatever. So they're cutting them into sections that would fit in these crates to take them to the museum. So they're in a way like they're trying to preserve them, but your response is saying you're not preserving anything because it's not in those material objects, right?
And there's one line in the film that really irked me where he says, the white men grow their beards, the natives use their electric razors. And I was like, it was so like condescending. So that's why in the film I have a beard.
Yeah.
Because like, I'm not Haida, and I have a beard, so whatever.
Yeah, and you actually, and before you even told me about that response, like I don't know if you specifically told me you grew a beard because of that, but you really, to me in that film, you looked like a guy from the 50s. You see, like you look like you had certain glasses on at that point. There was something about you, like you were really taking on almost I don't know if it was intentional. It sounds like a slightly like intentionally kind of performing someone from the era, like a Haida man from that era.
Yeah, I was playing a character.
Yeah.
Like it's some people think it's a documentary. It's like, it's not a documentary. It's shot like a documentary, but it's a fabrication. It's a story.
I think of it as a performance for video.
It's a performance. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then so what lives on in a lot of ways is the piece on the left, which is a sculpture, and then you brought some of the charcoal from the burning of the other piece into the gallery. So that was the show postscript that we showed the film.
So the charcoal and it's so my subcrest for our family is, for my clan, is beaver holding a broken stick. And I remember, I think it was you asked me, like, well, where's the broken stick? And I said, well, it's the ashes. Like, those are ashes from the eagle that I burned.
Yeah, I did ask that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, whoa, that's so because I guess I pictured the stick would be in the beaver's mouth. Like it would be, I don't know why.
Usually it is.
Oh, is that why? Okay.
That usually it is. That's why.
Yeah, that's kind of, it totally brings something from the whole work, like that it's now like in fragments, and it's kind of burnt. It is burnt, it's a burnt stick.
I think we should keep going though, because we gotta leave some time for questions.
Yeah, okay.
If there's anybody left.
Well, that's the main thing that I wanted to ask you about, was like there's still lots of people here. Don't worry.
Okay. This is just something I did. Like I went down a hike. This is from the Nootka Trail hike.
Yeah.
And I asked the guys who live there, and they said I was the first Haida to hike the Nootka Trail. They're like, oh, you're the first Haida we saw the native guys there. And so I did these giant like drawings in the sand. I did 5 of them. This is just the devilfish.
Wow.
And these are big. These are like 30 feet by 20 feet or whatever. So that's why I can't get like a real good picture.
Wow.
Because they're gigantic. And I just did it with my walking stick. It was fun, man.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. And that was just something I like when I go on hikes, on like marine trail hikes. And that, and then when the tide comes up, that's going to disappear, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of really enjoyed doing this sort of temporary artwork. I was like, oh, I wish I had a helicopter. I was like, take pictures though. Or a drone.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. One of the only good reasons to have a drone is to take pictures of these.
Yeah. Anyway, that was just fun.
They're really intricate. It looks anyway from this.
Yeah, they're fun. Yeah, next time I'll bring a drone.
Yeah. So
and then this is just Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, go ahead, keep going. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, and so this is a piece I did in a residency in Banff. And oh, you know what I didn't bring pictures of? I didn't bring pictures of Precious Nostalgic or Horrifying.
Yeah.
Totally forgot.
Well, we can talk about it.
We
Envision
can
it.
still talk about it. Anyway, damn, I can't believe that. And so this piece I did last year or 2 years ago. Can't remember. And so this is a series of 6 panels. And there's how it'll look installed. Now, it's a work in progress because the carving's all done, but I haven't built a base for it yet. So it can't actually stand as a sculpture yet. And it's so funny because this is sort of based on the idea of, originally I want to do something like carving a comic book.
Oh, good. You have close
Because I saw totem poles as like linear, or I call them linear metaphors, sort of a totem pole. And so I wanted to work with sort of sequential art and sort of carving. And so I had this idea, and I worked on it for years. Like years I was working on this because I couldn't find the right story. Like I wrote stories, and every time I finished writing a story, and I even started drawing some, and every time I do it, I'd be like, I'd stop and I'd be like, this doesn't need to be carved though. Like this isn't the story that I have to carve. It's just this story that I can just draw and to be just as good and just as powerful. You know what I mean? Like carving it doesn't add anything to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was really, looking quite hard for the story, and then sort of started remembering the Bear Mother story, and I sort of thought about that story, and I thought about how it's sort of history is, it's sort of comes from an oral tradition, but it's a carved story. Like it's been carved by artists over generations. And I was like, that's a story that needs to be carved, and it would work for what I want to do. So I just wanted to do, like, I basically just did the beginning of the story where the brother goes to, I guess a shaman or something, and basically they lay out the cedar mat, and they look into the mat, and that's how he's able to find his sister. Is they're able sort of like to look, and he sort of travels. I sort of, in my vision, he was sort of traveling on an astral plane, and so like these images here, that's him. But the reason there's no face is because it's not really him. He's just traveling, without moving.
And through the
And then
weaving,
he finds his sister.
something through the weaving, he finds.
Yeah. And so that's just the beginning of the story. So I just wanted to sort of capture that.
Is the weaving like is that kind of an origin story? Is that a creation story, I should say, or anything, something?
No.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah.
I like how weaving gets integrated into the carving.
Yeah.
Like that.
It was fun to do. It was a fun piece to do. It was a great residency. I met some really cool people. It was excellent. Yeah. And unfortunately, I didn't bring those other slides. So stupid of me.
That's okay.
And so Repeat the Course 3 Times is the piece I'm working on now.
Yeah.
And here's a couple of images.
You want to tell us about that?
So this is a piece, I actually made these box drums many years ago for installation for the Vancouver Children's Festival. And I called it Under One Beat. And what I want to do is, and what that means, Under One Beat, what it means is like the box drum is usually it's the beat that sort of keeps the drum dance group together. So that, so it starts first, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the rest of the song sort of starts, and then dancers come in and the singers and so on and so forth. But it's sort of the beat that holds the whole song together. And so originally it was for the Children's Festival. It wasn't painted. They weren't painted. They were just plain. And so I made all these like drumsticks, and I had it set up like in Granville Island, and it was during the Children's Festival. So the kids were like banging away on the drums, like nonstop. Like they had to they were only allowed to bring it out certain times of the day because the store owners were getting, they were getting angry because all they had these kids just banging the drums like unmelodically. So it was pretty amazing. Like I just go and check out once in a while and see the kids, and they just loved it. So it was awesome. And they kept on breaking drumsticks, so I had to keep making more drumsticks. And then after it was done with, I just had these box drums, and I was like, well, what am I going to do with these? And I was like, well, I got to think of like a project.
Mm-hmm.
And so first it was going to be part of that sound installation. And then when that idea sort of, stalled, I thought, well, I got to do something with them. And then all of a sudden so I was working on this idea, and I kept on working it out. Like kept on writing it out, like what the boxes would mean and so on and so forth. And I started thinking about like, the idea of caves and sort of, these, when you look inside, you're sort of looking inside this world. And so it all started with the first one, which the one on the right, and that was called what is the name of that piece again? Really bad with titles. I'm really bad at remembering my own titles. But it's called Only What You Take With You, and that was sort of the father's drum. It's a Raven design, and the idea behind that one was that's going to be attached to a backpack and have stuff, and that's sort of, there'll be a figure inside when you look inside, and that's sort of, and that one is sort of based on the idea that you carry your culture with you, but you also carry your traumas.
Mm-hmm.
You sort of have to always sort of keep them balanced, and that's sort of why it's going to be attached to a backpack. And
so that box drum will be attached to a backpack as well, as similar to like that pole part of the pole.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's where I got the idea. When I was hiking, I came up with the idea for this one. And the drum on the left, that's the big box drum, and that's the only one you can really play really well. That sounds really good. And so I wanted to keep it as something that you could play. And so that one's called I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, but that one's sort of based on my grandmother's. The design, the side you see here is the front of it, and it's the eagle design, and on the back is a raven design, sort of based on my two grandmothers. And inside there's a giant eye. And so the idea is, I mean, it's sort of cheesy, but I thought it's just the idea that of like, your ancestors are watching, or as Stormy Weber put it, I got her poster here. Ancestors know who we are, and sort of that's the idea I sort of came from. It's a quote by Stormy Weber. They are super cool, and yeah, and it's a really great piece because it sort of brings together like everything: singing, drumming, artwork.
Yeah.
And then the third box is going to be sort of, so the way they're set up is the third box is a small box. It's going to be painted completely black, and there's going to be a mask inside. And that one's sort of, the title is, I got it from a Tribe Called Red song, and it was waiting for and the line is waiting for the call that, what is it? Waiting for the call that says it's mom. And so that was sort of like this idea of like this sort of trauma that we carry with us. And that's why it's small and it's black and it looks really heavy. And so like I said, sort of like the middle box sort of balances the two.
And the middle boxes are your grandmother's?
No, the middle box is the
one you carry.
Backpack.
Oh, okay.
The big one is the very cultural, very sort of common.
And those, so one side is one grandmother and one side is the other grandmother.
Yeah.
One is eagle and one is a raven.
Yeah.
And the raven side is the side you can play. And that's your grandmother on your dad's side.
Yeah.
And so if people don't know box drums, one thing I've just learned a lot from seeing this work and talking to Luke about it is these are big cedar boxes you built, and they're hollow inside, so you can look down inside them, and you usually hit one side of it to make the sound. Is that right, Luke?
Yeah. I mean, you can hit both. And the reason, like, you can't see it, but the other side, it's a very sort of planar painting. And the reason I did that was because when you hit it, like, it chips the paint off. And I sort of thought if I did a sort of more basic painting, I could sort of fix it up easier. Mm-hmm. And so you play the back, and then people can see the front.
And do people play it with their hand or with a stick?
You smack it with your hand.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's pretty hard work. And
so this idea of like ancestors, I kind of see this. There's some earlier work that you didn't show, but I'm going to talk about it and just for a second. Just the earlier work, Phantom Limb, was a work where you also were kind of acknowledging human remains in museums, but I think in a way you were also really acknowledging ancestors and those reappropriated remains of ancestors. And I was thinking about like how I don't know, how does that relate to stories in a way for you in your work? Like, are stories, how do you see them connected to ancestors?
I think, like I said, it, it came from like, it came from who I apprenticed with. Like I was always a
Mhm,
storyteller,
mm,
but it came from Henry, where he talked about using the artwork has to mean something, and he uses traditional stories, and the stories are tied to the land. And like, so if you own a certain story, that means that you own like a certain piece of land, or and also rights, sort of different privileges and rights as well. So the stories are very important, and so different families can own stories just like they can own songs.
and it connects
And
them to
so
their
and
place
so it
as
becomes
well.
very important that way. And that's another reason I didn't want to use the traditional stories, is because I didn't want to like, accidentally sort of uh, what do you call it? Accidentally make someone angry with me.
Mhm, mm.
Because I figured if I'm telling contemporary stories, like I did a giant print based on Lyle Island, the sort of standoff that happened in the 80s. And so I thought, well, nobody really owns that story, so I can probably use that story. And same with the Phantom Limb, so like with the repatriation of the remains, I was like, well, that's a contemporary story, like, and nobody really owns it, so I can, you know, I mean, everybody owns it, not nobody owns it.
Yeah.
Everybody owns it, so
Mhm,
I can work with this idea.
mhm. Well, this is really good. Like this has been a real, um, quite a lot of work that you've shown tonight. Do you think we should open it up for some
Sure.
conversation questions? Also, oh wait, we should probably, because you did kind of really emphasize that everyone should read Corey Pass, this
Yeah.
short story. And so
Yeah.
um, I was thinking of a few things about why that story relates um, to your recent work and also to, yeah, your recent work. But did you want to talk about how, like why you wanted everyone to read that and to
Well,
sort of,
I
yeah.
think one of the reasons is because it's called contingencies of care, and this idea of care, and I thought it wanted, and I had that story like, and I just thought it was like, it was based on it was based, it's a true story, and it's based on my time when I was at residency in Banff, and my cousin passed away, um, and so I was there, and I was like grieving, and I sort of had to sort of deal with what I was going to do with my grief, and unfortunately, I didn't put the images of the artwork I was working on while I was there, because that totally was what I did. It was called Precious Nostalgic Horror. I'll put pictures on the website later,
Yeah.
of the piece, maybe on the mill note under my work sort of thing. But anyway, so I made this series of carvings, and the way I did it was like, and it was all about like at the time, there was a lot of missing and murdered Indigenous people coming up on my Facebook. Like every time I saw a picture of a young Native person, I was like, oh no, and it was just nonstop. And then my cousin passed away, and I was working with his multiples of 10, and I sort of came upon the story of 10 little Indian boys, where each verse one of them dies until the end. The last one commits suicide, and so I decided I would work with that. So what I did was I rewrote each verse as like a haiku, and then I did drawings based on the haiku, and then I did carvings based on the drawing. So I was using like iterations as a way of creating the piece, and that was really, and it was based on all the stories in there are based on stories I heard or people I knew who passed away. So each one is sort of based on a true story, um,
And each
and so
carving,
and that's
each
each
carving is
carving.
like a mask.
Yeah, each carving is based on a story of an Indigenous person who passed away.
Mhm.
So it was pretty rough work, and it was really, I had to get into really, I didn't have to get into a dark place. I was in a dark place when I created it, and that's why that one was also really hard to finish. Like I had to put it away for a year after the residency, and I didn't. And then a year later, I sort of took it out and finished it. So I needed time away from it, because it was, and also the story. And like I thought, I want to tell the story of this hike that I did like right after he passed away, because it really sort of helped me. Like it was, if you read the story, then you understand it's very personal.
I love the line that really hits me because there's this kind of separation between your grief and the group you're with, even though that time that you're spending with them is really important. But they're not aware, maybe, it seems like in the story, they're not aware of what you're going through. And when you, like that Blade Runner quote, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near the Tannhäuser Gate. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in the rain. And like that's, I mean, you say, and then cheesily, I'm crying in the rain, but there's also something about, I feel like in a way, it explains the separation or the distance you have with the people you're with, even though you seem pretty close to them too, but there's a distance. Your grief is kind of creating a distance, or you need to have that distance to be able to work through that grief while you're on that hike. And I think I love the intervention of the Blade Runner quote, but that it seems so appropriate and emotional. I think that was a really nice turning point in the story. I just wanted to make sure you knew that. And then also running into the bear seemed,
I know.
there was something about that seemed, after you decided what you're going to do, you know, and then suddenly there's a bear, and I don't know, something about that seemed, I don't know how to read into it, but it seemed like those things coincided in a way. Do you feel like that is true?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy because we're just like walking along. Yeah, it was pretty funny.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to say any more, if you want to open it up for some
No, let's
questions.
open it up.
Okay, and if people have read if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, anything, please feel free to say it. And also, if you've read the story and you want to just maybe something that stood out to you, feel free to speak to that too. We're really happy that you're here. It's almost 11 o'clock. It's in Eastern Standard Time. So yeah, does anybody have any thoughts or comments or questions?
Hey, it's Sherry.
Hey,
Hey.
Sherry.
Hi, Luke. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Hi there. I can put my video on. I'm just kind of shy with these things.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. It's so great to hear all of that. And I just want to thank you both for such a beautiful conversation. And I'm always amazed to hear the stories behind Luke's work, because as a maker, I'm just always so moved by the exceptional caliber of making and graphic quality, and just the expertise and beauty of it. And then when you speak, Luke, you speak really plainly and clearly. And I value that so much, because it just brings this depth to everything you do that's quite profound. I also want to say that there's a ritualistic quality in everything that Luke does, I find, that seems to connect art with the function of art, of what art means and what it can mean to community and living, and beyond just an object that we would see in a museum or a gallery. And that there's that narrative, but also there's a ritual, and I search for that in my own work. And I just want to thank you for being so wise and great with making it in yours. It's a real gift.
I didn't give you a copy of the story.
I know, I'm so curious now, because I
I
was part of that residency.
It was part of our residency, yeah.
Yeah,
I changed the name. I changed the names, but it's like Mike and Georg and
yeah. Oh, amazing. Well, I know you guys did a lot of hiking, and you're also a master hiker. There was a lot of wonderful physical activity on that that I didn't participate in as much as some of the others. You guys were moving around.
Yeah, it was great.
There's some amazing work made.
Oh, thanks.
That's all I want to say. I just really, really enjoyed that whole thing.
Oh, thanks for coming.
Oh my gosh, no problem. My pleasure. I'm sitting here working in my studio as I'm listening, so it's a real, it's a real treat.
Good.
Yeah, maybe me and Lisa will start a podcast.
Yeah.
Do it. Do it.
I love podcasts. Yes.
Yeah, right. Me too.
No one will be able to see your hat, though. That's the only thing. We'd have to do some video things.
Hey, Peter.
I was curious if the hat had a story. If there was is there a story on that hat?
My brother-in-law gave it to me.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, so it's a
it was
family gift.
Yeah, it was a wonderful gift.
It's beautiful. It looks really good.
Thanks.
Who did someone make it?
Yeah, he didn't tell me who. He just gave it to me, and I was just like, wow, thank you.
And it fits you.
Yeah.
That's lucky.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, it's cedar. It stretches.
right? As you sweat
Yeah.
and it breathes.
Hey, Peter,
Hi,
did you want
hi
to say,
everybody. Hi.
Hi, how's it going?
It's great to see you guys, and I just thought I would also show my face and to take a moment to say that I just really I mean, with all the stuff going on in the world, and I just really appreciated witnessing and experiencing your guys' friendship, and it's a really beautiful friendship. And I'm sitting here with my two friends and the kitty cat, and we're all just really watching, and and I think that's
I
really
hear you.
I like, and the expressions of care, I mean, are always important, and especially important at this time. But alongside of that, thinking about Luke's creative practice and your own, Lisa, and about the relationality of that you prioritize the building of relationships, how the artwork actually lives in the community, and lives in the bodies of the people who come into contact with your creative practice, production, and thinking, and laughing, and friendship, and sharing. Just is really, really beautiful. And I do actually have a question. So,
Okay, great.
Luke, thank you so much for your naming and deep thoughtful thinking about the Arts of the Raven exhibition and Robes of Power. And as somebody from the West Coast too, like, those two exhibitions are super important. And how they go from the West Coast and spill out over this territory, I think that's super important. Have you thought about the curators themselves of those? This is what I was wondering. Have you thought of the curators themselves? And they're sort of like, because the Arts of the Raven, curated by Bill Reed, Robes of Power, curated by Doreen Jensen and Polly Sargent, right? Like, have you, in your critique and thinking of that, did that come into consideration as well? That's it. That's a long question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I said like the appropriation, like I didn't show the text, but the text is like their words,
Oh, really?
and it's not like and I tried to do it sort of without judgment, like I wasn't picking and choosing, like, so that it sounded like they were, I was sort of judging them for what they were saying in their curatorial statements. I was sort of trying to analyze the way that the curation of Northwest Coast art has changed over the years.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was trying to like capture the moment.
Mhm.
And so, like with Robes of Power, some of it's from the curators, like the statement from the curators,
Mm-hmm.
because there wasn't a lot of criticism of that exhibition.
Yeah.
So you couldn't really sort of, find a critique of it. So it was mostly words from the curators. And it's funny. So I had these lines that I appropriated, and I can't remember which exhibition it was. It might have been I can't remember which one it was, but one of the curators was at the show.
Oh, really?
They were like, those are. I'm pretty sure that was I said that, and I'm like, yeah, you did. That's the words. I appropriated them.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'd love to see those texts too. I'm going to bother you to get a copy of them. I'd love to see what they are. Okay. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm taking up
If
too
you
much
could
time.
post them on Milanote.
Oh yeah,
maybe you
can you
could
do that?
Yeah,
post
there's a
them
lot of
on
stuff I could
Milanote.
post. Yeah, I can do that.
Awesome. Thanks.
That
you
would
two.
be great. We're for those who are not in the residency, Milanote is like this platform that we're all sharing stuff for this past week and this week, including our artwork.
So, anyone else? Any burning questions?
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. That was really enjoyed that, and yeah, echoing Peter's comments of just enjoying watching the two of you talk and kind of dive into the work. I was thinking about this story just at the end, the story, and I was wondering, Luke, this kind of thinking about like the generosity of sharing a story about grief that's really hard to kind of carry like in your own body. And I'm wondering, like, for you, is there, what happens when you share a story that's so close to your heart like that through your work? Does it become lighter? Does it transform? Is there some element that changes in you as a result?
Yeah, like, because afterwards I hint to it in the story at the end, like the part where I say, well, maybe Daryl wouldn't understand. I didn't really come to that conclusion at the time. Like at the time, I thought I was doing the right thing. Because art was really important to Daryl, and me being an artist was really important. And I didn't want to, like, I was sort of in a space there where I was creating, and it was my first time doing residency, and it was really like special to me. And so
it was good you stayed. I was happy you stayed.
Yeah, and Daryl, and honestly, I was really selfish at the time. Like I should have gone back for the funeral, like to support my family, but I didn't. That's the truth. Like that's the honest truth. So I can't change the past. So I just sort of want to sort of explore, and I needed distance. Like I didn't write it till years later, right? And I needed that distance between then and sort of I could look back and be honest with myself about sort of the time. And it was so like vivid in my memory too. That's another thing too. It was so vivid in my memory. Like I had to like get it out somehow because, I remembered as soon as I found out Daryl passed away, like those next couple of days, I remember, everything about those days, like going up to Vistas and, what time we met up and, people's facial expressions and the hike and, and did you read the part where Mike barked like a dog and grabbed Georg's leg?
Yeah.
Like in real life, it was so funny. And Georg was like, Mike, you do not do that on the mountain. Oh, man.
Yeah, it was funny actually, like reading as I was reading it, like having a feeling of recognition and then going, oh, I know this story from like a context of the story, I guess. Yeah, that's interesting that like coming back to it later gives you another perspective on it, and you only really come to that by sharing it with people, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, and it felt like it needed to be shared. Like I said, it was so vivid. Like I could remember so much about it that I just felt like I couldn't keep it inside.
Yeah.
And, and I did think about it. Like I thought I didn't want to, I changed the names because, people don't really need to know people's names. I probably didn't have to. I don't know. But it was like, why did I share it? I know I contemplated not sharing it because I didn't want to like hurt anybody, like my family members and stuff. Like if they read it and thought, oh, Luke was being so selfish, or whatever, or that's our personal story, stuff like that. But that's why it took me a long time to write it. And yeah, and I sort of had to contemplate my own selfishness at the time too. So I had to like sort of like, I don't want to say forgive myself, but give myself time to like deal with it.
I feel like the hike itself was like this metaphor for what you were going through. Like it was the hike, no switchbacks, you're going straight up. Like
it was brutal.
There were so many stages of the hike itself that were metaphors for your emotions, your grief, your like where you were, the rain, like everything, all these elements. It was like it was what it was a way to convey to the reader like what it was you were going through. And it was a hike, but it was also this grief that you're going through. That's how I read it. And so
yeah, it was super important. Like it was really like it totally helped. Like it was really perfect timing to have such a brutal hike. Like I was so down in like dumps, and I was feeling so terrible. And then you do that hike and it's just like you know, your endorphins are firing like, you know, 1,000 miles an hour because it's so hard and it's raining and it's just like, and it's almost like, I remember it now, it was like a beautiful rain. Like now it's like in my memory, it's all shiny. The rain is shiny and it was dangerous too. Like some parts are really dodgy on that hike, man. Like the second part where you go over the rocks, like it, you know, if you slipped, you'd fall very, very far. Like it was pretty, and you know, I had to cut some stuff out because I was trying to stay under 2,000 words. So like we met up with people along the way and I just cut them out of the story completely. So yeah,
And
I kept all the important parts. Like running down the shale was like so awesome. Like that gave me a huge endorphin rush because like, you know, just running at full speed down and like feeling like if you fall, you're going to get hurt really badly. So it was great.
hiking and walking seem like really important to you, like not just in your work, but in general. It seems,
Yeah,
because like also walking, you know, you did take the train across the country, but you did kind of walk quite a bit with that
yeah,
pull
4
on your
days. It was
back,
brutal.
right?
Yeah. If you watch the movie, you can see me getting really sweaty and tired near the end because we did it like, you know, it was done sequentially. Like we didn't like film the end first or anything like that.
Yeah.
Well, are there any other questions or comments? No, it doesn't look like it.
Okay. Well, I guess those people who didn't receive the story or wasn't able, Luke will email it to you. Later, you can read it and think more about it. Yeah, I guess I would just want to do you have any parting words, Luke, or do you want me to?
Not really. Just say thank you for coming out and listening to me talk about myself. It's always great. It's a pleasure to be. It's really a pleasure to be a part of this. I was so happy when you guys asked me.
Yeah.
I was happy to share my story. To be honest, I haven't really had a chance to share it with anybody. Lisa helped me. Lisa edited it for me.
Well, I
Did an amazing job, and it's so having an editor is so amazing. Like, you know, you just don't see your own. You know, a lot of stuff if your own writing you don't see because you're too close to it. Like it's like you're saying, like when you're writing, like you know what happened, so you leave stuff out because you understand, because you sort of take things for granted. And then there's someone says, "Well, can you explain that a bit more?" It's like, "Oh yeah, of course I need to explain it. You weren't there." Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everybody needs an editor. Everybody needs it. It helps. It's like other eyes from another angle. It's like just stuff you can't see, right? So
Yeah.
I like how story's there for you, and I really like that you shared this story and and it is a really personal story, and that you wanted to include that in this talk, and how writing is part of your work, and story comes through not just through written word, but in through the artwork itself. And I like how you presented a couple times when you talked about it, like you said, I wanted to approach this as an artist and not as an academic. And I feel like that's something you're really asserting in your work, which I think is important. I think it's really important, especially working in an academic context. Like we as artists, we need to be able to say, this is the way that I'm looking at things. This is the way and not just trying to adhere to what we think academia expects of us. So I think I really respect that you really assert that, and it's really good, and it serves the work, and it serves the work really well. So yeah, so thanks so much for everybody coming, and thanks for opening up, and also thanks for questions and comments. I don't know what else to say. Zoom is hard to leave sometimes, but we've been probably all of us have been on Zoom for many hours today. So there's lots of thank yous in the chat. Thank you so much. And there's a comment from Priscilla. Thank you for sharing the story. Hearing about grief and an experience mediating on it is amazing. And then lots of thank yous to us. All right. So
all right.
I guess we'll say goodnight. Say much, and thank you for taking the time. And for those who are in Eastern Standard Time, you're probably going to go to sleep soon, so have a good sleep.
Yeah.
And those on the West Coast, I don't know, there's probably still time to go, I don't know, do something, have supper.
Go on a hike.
Yeah, go on a hike.
Anyway, so I'll
Hopefully,
post some pictures of that work we talked about on in the mill note, because I was going to post them in this so we could look at them and talk about them, and I totally forgot.
what's that?
Like the Precious, Nostalgic, and Horrifying, like those,
Okay.
and the rest of the exhibition history.
Yeah. Post them on your
Paintings.
Mila note. Yeah.
Yeah, I will post them probably tomorrow.
So yeah, check out
Totally slipped my mind.
Luke's Mila note, and you can post more. Well, then this is just the beginning of our new podcast thing. So we'll just have to keep talking about these things.
And leave comments.
Yes.
Makes me happy.
Leave comments on his Mila note. Okay.
On my
Thanks,
mill note.
everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Good night. Thank you for hosting.